Alright, I am back with another Destiny 2 video. Yeah, so that was not the greatest morning, huh? I'm going to talk about the massive leak that happened this morning that was courtesy of Sony. I am not going to be talking about any specifics or spoilers, so you don't have to worry about that here. I, as of right now, have avoided any actual spoilers from this leak, and yet it is still certainly a big deal and something you want to be aware of. So I woke up this morning with the news that the final shape had leaked, as in sort of all of it. Not all of it, it turns out, in the sense that like every single thing known, is been released about the expansion, but really the entire expansion was playable for a certain amount of time overnight. This appears to have been something having to do with Sony's remote play streaming thing, where, as best I understand it, there was like some sort of build that Bungie pushed, and then Sony grabbed that and then put it live via streaming. So it was like you didn't have to patch your game on like in a normal way you'd patch 50 gigabytes for an expansion or whatever. But for streaming players, it was accessible and playable, and you could just log in and play the final shape. This is pretty rare for a game that requires an online connection and requires the servers to be in a state to allow this, but this appears to be something specific that happened with Sony and their own system internally that allowed for this colossal screw up. So what we know about it is Bungie has now commented itself on this and said, this happens, it sucks, please don't share spoilers. That is kind of the long and short of it. Some amount of people got some amount of access to the campaign. Who exactly got what access and for how long is kind of being debated at this point. There is a wide range from, there was a report like, oh, it's not a big deal. Like one person got access to like the campaign and saw 70% of the first cutscene and was kicked off, to like, no, someone played the whole campaign, at least through the start of the raid, and experienced all of that. I've heard all manner of things somewhere in the middle. I know that this leak, occurred a long time before it started being shared like widely. Like these Reddit posts went up, blah, blah, blah. Like people had already had access to it for a long while. And like some people are sharing their experiences, some people aren't. Any proof that you would post to social media is going to get your ass DMCA'd really quickly. So I understand why you wouldn't want to do that, or you just don't want to be a dick and share spoilers. But it's Bungie acknowledges that people played some amount of the campaign, and as someone they demoed the first level for, that didn't really explain a whole lot, and it wasn't exactly something mind-blowing. But the other aspects of this were collections were accessible, and collections were accessible in a state where things like raid loots or raid mods were not redacted or hidden. So those could be seen ahead of time. In terms of raid mechanics, you could debate like just learning the name of some buff or something is not really going to ruin it. But if I was doing a world's first raid race, that was probably something I would at least want to know, even offhand. Obviously, it's more fun when the loot for something like the raid is a surprise. There are lore tabs that were available to be seen on the weapons and gear and whatever, and obviously that can contain a significant amount of story spoilers. I think the raid name was leaked. The entire season pass for the first episode, or episodic pass, if we're calling it that now, was leaked also, which includes all the gear from that. I at least think some of that had lore. It's just, we don't know how many people had access to this, how far they got, and what amount of people may have saved something like a screenshot to a lore tab or something. So it does seem to be the case where even people who are like really digging for stuff have a little trouble finding anything that is all that mind-blowing. But I am not willing to, say that, oh, this was no big deal, like no one really got anything of significance. It's a pretty big deal. And if I was Bungie, I would be pretty pissed at Sony right now. Weirdly, there was this thing that happened at the same time where it was rumored that the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC had leaked at the same time through some sort of similar accessible remote play thing. I have not been able to verify that or see proof of that. The idea was maybe it did happen, except the ability to start the DLC or whatever was just so convoluted or hidden that it was not able to be actually done by anyone. So I've not seen any legitimate leaks for that. Don't know if that actually happened or not, but it was weird that that started exactly the same time as the Final Shape rumor. So I'd be surprised if there was nothing there, because the Final Shape thing did actually happen. Whatever happened here on the technical end is something Sony's going to have to need to button up quickly. Given that this information is now live, I would, I can't be like the guy who's like, stay off the internet, because that's like, for me, like cutting off a limb. So it's not really viable to just say don't be on the internet to most people. Stay out of like deep into comment threads or show hidden replies or things like that on various social media sites, on Reddit, heavily downvoted things that people are trying to hide, stuff like that. Even if it's not like the amazing ultimate, mind-blowing reveals that have been leaked through this, it is still something you do not want to see heading in, I'm guessing, for most people. I know there are some people who are leak hounds who want to seek out everything they can ahead of time, but if you are that person, that's fine, but don't share it with anyone else. It's a really bad situation for Bungie, and I think they all feel pretty bad about it. I don't think this should be celebrated at all. It just sort of sucks and takes a little bit of the wind out of the sails of things. Usually we've seen, someone said that like it's an internal joke at Bungie that when they get close to release, they're like, well, how's Sony going to leak it this time? Because things like this have happened in the past, but it's usually like, Sony India or something, or, Sony Malaysia, like leaking some sort of trailer or whatever that's not supposed to be live early. We have not seen this with leaking the entire playable expansion. And again, I do think this would have been totally playable if they hadn't caught it and just shut it down. I don't think it was like, there was content you couldn't access. If there was content you couldn't access, it was because just there wasn't enough time to, get to the right Guardian rank or, beat the campaign to start the raid or things like that. So it wasn't live long enough for anyone to get that far, but I also think it was more damaging than like, oh, someone watched half a cutscene like that. I've seen that too, and I think it is a little more involved in that. It's not a great situation. I don't think it ruins launch or anything, but you are going to have to be somewhat cautious here. Bungie themselves are saying that spoilers are online, and you should be careful as much as you can be. I cannot really do anything about this. I very much implore no one to post any spoilers in comments here and comments on Twitter, comments on articles. Just don't do it. Just don't be a dick. We all would theoretically like to experience this live together as things launch. It seems like, well, this is a huge deal. It could have been somewhat worse. So the stuff we do potentially know, maybe it's not the whole picture. So things you do hear, just take everything with a grain of salt if we're lacking larger context for it. We'll hopefully nothing else like this happens in the next, 5 days here now. There's still plenty of time for more leaks to happen, which I'm not going to say is impossible given where we are now, but hopefully that is not what happens. Hopefully that this is the last of it. And it's very bad. I have no idea what the hell happened with Sony here, but if this could happen to Destiny, it could probably happen to any other game, whether that's Elden Ring or whatever. But they need to button up this security flaw really, really quickly, because this can go even worse, very quickly, depending on what's going on here. And this has already damaged the huge release of their new partner Bungie here, and that is very unfortunate. Hopefully from here we only hear official things. I've said that maybe it's time for marketing to just chill, and we only have a couple days left, so I don't know what else really we can see at this point. They just aired a trailer for a Dungeons and Dragons crossover, which includes new armor sets to buy that I assume are going to be launching with the Final Shape. I don't know enough about Dungeons and Dragons, but like monster themed armor to some extent, and it looks cool. So that's something. I think they wanted to roll that out today to maybe change the conversation. Today is also TWAB Day, so we'll see if there's anything interesting in there. I was just going to wait and do a video on that, but here we are with a larger situation on our hands. So yeah. So anyway, thanks for watching. Avoid leaks. Don't share leaks. The end. Okay. Take care.